Good people, great people, guys, people. What the deal? As always, my name is Odilakachi William Hezekiah Onkwe. I call myself Professor Odi. And the reason being is because, you know what I'm saying, I got the qualifications to be a professor, right? So, I'm going to tell y'all what's been going on, man. In the last 2 or 3 weeks, y'all been going crazy, man. I got close to 25,000 new followers based upon these lives that I've been doing, so I appreciate y'all, man. Y'all been going crazy, right? And with these new followers come new examples of what it is that I mean when I say that there are things on both sides of the fence that occur that impact, microcosmic relationships. And what I mean by that is that as I've been putting out these new videos, I've been seeing the responses from both men and women, and both men and women engage in invalidating responses. Right? We want to pretend as if though men and women do not engage in invalidating responses, but they engage in invalidating responses, right? So I want to double back for a little bit. Whenever I talk about black people, I'm usually talking about black people in conjunction, both black men and black women and everything that exists in between those two things. Now, a lot of people, what will happen is that they'll see one video of what it is that I'm talking about, and they believe that they understand the type of person that I am from that one video. No, when I am talking about the black people, I am usually talking about the black people as a black familial unit, the black man, the black woman, and the black child, irrespective of the gender of that child, right? So, if we look at the black family unit as a complete unit and a system, we have to recognize that there is a high probability that everybody in that system has been traumatized in some way, shape, or form. Because statistically, black people are more likely to experience life-altering trauma before the age of 14 than any other race, period. That's statistical, right? So what that means is between black men and black women, when we talk about the reality of a situation, we always have to talk in the reality in the contextualization of blackness. And a lot of times we don't. Right? What will happen is that we will talk about the trauma of black people as if though it exists in the contextualization of whiteness, right? So what do I mean by that? Black men will say to black women, you all caused this trauma, and black women will say, no, we didn't, because of what is happening around you, right? Black women will say, black men, you have caused this trauma, and black men will say, no, we didn't cause this trauma, it's what happened around you. The reality of the situation is that the individual exists in the environment. Therefore, there is no way that you can alleviate the completeness of the environment to yourself. In other words, at some level, you are a product of your environment because you had to learn vicariously from the environment that you were in. If we as black people exist in a consistent environment where we have a heightened probability to trauma, that means that both black men and black women have residual trauma that we are accountable for, right? So let me break this down, because today what it is that I'm talking about specifically is the responses that I get from black women who invalidate black men's trauma because they're looking at black men as perpetuators of the patriarchy and not victims of the environments that they were in, right? So I'm going to give an example. When I put out the video about black men doing the work, I got a number of black women in my comments saying that this man is still blaming black women for what's going on with black men. Black women, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to say this very clearly. You can perpetuate trauma just as much as a black man can perpetuate trauma. And the reality of the situation is a number of you all have perpetuated trauma that you are asking black men not to perpetuate onto you. That is the reality of the situation. 100%. Right? Today's theme is Wisdom Wednesdays, and I really need you all to understand that this is the wisdom that a lot of black women tend to overlook when they are on their own quest for what they call healing. That's the reality of the situation, because once again, I'm not on TikTok just, talking shit. I'm a therapist. This is what I do for a living, right? This is what I do on a consistent basis. And I can tell you that in my therapy rooms, yes, there are men that come in with learned behavioral patterns that harm their partner, but there are women who come into my sessions with learned behavioral patterns that harm their partners. And those learned behavioral patterns, yes, they do come from black men, but black women, you are responsible for resolving that trauma. That is the bottom line. That is the bottom line. You are responsible for resolving that trauma, and you are responsible for creating effective boundaries around that trauma. What will happen is that a lot of the times we invalidate black men's trauma because it's coming out of the mouths of black men. I'm going to say it one more time. We invalidate black men's trauma because it is coming out of the mouth of black men. We begin invalidating black men's trauma when they are black boys. That is the fact of the matter. We project hypermasculinity onto black boys so that they become hypermasculine black men. And very rarely do we talk about it. And very rarely do we talk about how it is that black women will re-perpetuate some of these things onto these black men or onto these black boys, right? So the example that I gave in my video was that the black father left, which caused the black mother trauma. What a lot of black women heard was that you're still placing the blame on black women. No, I'm not. I'm talking about the system that creates harm black women who then turn around and harm other black men. Right? The system does not spare you based upon your gender. It does not. It does not. And a number of black women will utilize the patriarchy to say that black men not only, one, participate in it, but two, have privileges in it. We do have privileges in the patriarchy as black men. We do. A lot of the times what will happen is that it'll get projected that we have the same amount of privileges as white men and thus the same impact as white men in black communities. And the reality of the situation is we do not. We don't. We do not. The statistics do not hold up that evidence. They don't. Statistically, what happens with black men is that, so let's even talk about it in the sense of like financial provisions, right? Yes, black men do on average get paid more than black women, on average. Also, on average, black women are more likely to get hired and more likely to stay at their jobs longer and thus receive more benefits than black men. Why? Because of what happens with black men during their period of employment. Black men are still susceptible to the same issues that happen outside of that job and inside of that job as well. Black women are not perceived as threatening the same way that black men are, so the effects are different, right? That's the moderation of gender. So when we are talking about the trauma that black men experience based upon our intersection of man and blackness, I don't care what anybody says, because once again, I've done the research. The research is that irrespective of your gender, your race modifies every other demographic label. It does. Sociologically speaking, race, not gender, race is the strongest modifier of particular statistics as it relates to demographic movements, right? Black men are actually more likely to slide back into poverty and stay in poverty than black women, right? So I'm not saying that black men don't have an advantage. I'm saying that the advantage is not as large as sometimes is projected upon black men, that then creates some of the feeling of non-safety that we as black men have when we're attempting to give black women more information about how it is that we are hurting, right? I'm going to give another example. A number of black women will negate the trauma that black men have been through based upon the way that that man presents that trauma, right? Black men have been taught to express their emotions in a detached way. Most men have been taught to express their emotions in a detached way, but once again, we are talking about black men, right? Y'all have to realize that we are consistently thinking about how it is that we are going to be perceived as a threat by anybody. By anybody, right? If that situation escalates because that woman cannot handle what it is that I'm saying, I am the one who is going to be criminalized before she is. So I have to then manage my emotions even more, which requires a significant amount of emotional labor, right? But I've literally seen women, with my own eyes, Look over what it is that a man has said to them in plain language. I did this because you did that. What that man will not say is, this hurt me, therefore my behaviors have changed. But then a woman will turn around and say, well, I'm not a mind reader, but you also will attempt to lord your emotional intellectual superiority over that man, but then won't recognize when he's in an emotionally compromising position based upon how it is that you've harmed him. So once again, we have to be very mindful about how it is as black people we deal with each other's trauma, because it is not omnidirectional. I'm sorry, the trauma is omnidirectional, right? We have to be aware of how it is that we manage each other's, or not manage each other's trauma, identify each other's trauma, right? Because another thing that I've seen from black women is that y'all will say it in public, y'all will agree in public, but then when it gets to you and that person in a room, and you feel invalidated simply because this man is disagreeing with how it is that you are responding, not your emotions. He's not saying you can't feel the way that you feel. He's saying you tweaking right now. What y'all hear is you're invalidating my emotions. No, you're behaving like a child. Behaving. In cognitive behavioral therapy, we separate emotions, behaviors, and cognition. They all overlap. They are interdependent. But you can separate the two. I've said it before. I can validate your emotions without tolerating your behavior. I can validate your emotions without tolerating your behavior. And a number of women will engage in emotional whataboutisms as well. What about if he did this? What about if he did that? Okay. That is fine. And that does not excuse your behavior. Because that is literally the language of an abuser. If a man hits a woman and the reason why, they will ask, why did you hit this woman? Because she made me upset. Everybody loses their shit. I've literally gone on TikTok and watched videos of men responding to trauma, and the women will say, well, he must have done something. This seems like reactive abuse. First of all, what? 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 So women can have reactionary abuse, but men can't? Right? People will talk about this concept, this very controversial concept in mental health about omnidirectional abuse, right? It's this idea that when two people who have been abused get together, they begin abusing one another because their trauma is talking to one another past their healthy parts. For a lot of black people who have come from chaotic households, who have come from households where a healthy relationship was not modeled, we as people a lot of us engage in omnidirectional abuse. We do. Or we do not recognize how our defense mechanisms from the trauma that we have experienced can be perceived as abuse by another person. So I'm going to be very honest, right? As an individual, when I feel emotionally overwhelmed, I shut down. I shut down because I have a tendency to become explosive if I do not manage my emotions correctly, because I come from a household where my father was explosive. So for me, if you get the hollering and screaming at me, if you get the I feel like you're going to hit me because I was hit. I am 6'3". I am 275 pounds. I don't give a damn if you 6'3" or 5'2". If you get the hollering and screaming at me, bro, I'm going to clam up. Why? Because I perceive it as you getting ready to attack me, and I have to make myself basically small so that I do not continue to perceive that as an attack. Because as a man, nobody gonna want to hear that I felt threatened by this woman. Even though there have been multiple situations in which a woman has escalated to the point where she has put her hands on me. I've put my hands on one woman. One. In my adult life. And I told myself I would never allow for that to happen again. After that point, on March 23rd, 2017, after that point, I have been assaulted by two other women, 3 different times. Two other women, 3 different times. Right? People are turning around and say, "Oh, why didn't you just do this? Why didn't you just do that?" Dot, 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 dot. 2 of them popped up at my house. Right? So let's be very clear. Let's be very clear about what it is that we are talking about here. We are talking about accountability irrespective of gender. And what the same way women are attempting to figure out where this whole red pill alpha male community came from, it comes from the invalidation of emotions of men on both sides. Men and women invalidate these men's emotions and opinions. That's the reality of the situation. And I know it's the reality of the situation because I've seen it. I've watched it as a therapist. I've watched it happen. I've literally had to tell women in my therapy sessions to just sit. I don't need a response. I don't need a rebuttal. I need you to sit in the fact that you have damaged this man. I need you to sit in the fact that you have caused somebody emotional trauma. And as a woman, I know that is not socialized. That is not what you are socialized to believe, but you have caused this person emotional damage. And you need to sit with that because the reality of the situation is what you are experiencing right now is a cognitive dissonance between who you believe yourself to be and what it is that you've actually done. And that is why men deflect. Y'all are not absolved of this deflection behavior. You all are not. You are not absolved of this deflection behavior. You are not. Right? So what are we talking about here? What are we identifying here? Right? What are we really saying is going on in this situation? Right? Oh, no. My TikTok live is doing something weird. Hold on, you guys. I got to restart the live on TikTok. Hey. And we back with it. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. And we back. Right? So, the invalidation of men's emotions, right? We know that it's a byproduct of the patriarchy. We know. We know that it's a byproduct of toxic masculinity. We know. We know what it's a byproduct of. We know. But if you have internalized those byproducts and you are perpetrating that same thing, we are not talking about who created the idea. We are talking about who is employing it. We are not talking about who created the idea. We are talking about who is employing it, right? And there are a number of situations where we as men do not have the emotional intelligence to be able to piece together what it is that we have experienced at the hands of women because we've been taught not to use that language. We've been taught to just suck it up, right? When I was in undergrad, I was in an emotionally abusive relationship and I had no clue simply because I was under the impression that that's just how women behaved. It was not until I took a test in class. I did an exercise in class. And I went to my professor and I said, "Yo, professor, I think I did this wrong because my scores are like off the charts." She said, "Well, we can do it again as you're sitting right here in front of me." I said, "Cool." I did it again. And she said, "Mr. Hezekiah, I think you need to reevaluate your relationship." Right? Now, in no way, shape, or form am I demonizing the women that this happened from because once again, right? Yes, they were engaging in abusive behaviors. And if these women identified these behaviors, took accountability for them, and grew from them, then they are no longer that same person. I've made space for that, right? I'm not saying that I'm not going to have the discernment because you still did what you did, little baby. You're going to have to stand on that 100, right? But at the end of the day, if that person has taken accountability and grown from that, then that person is no longer the same person. A lot of black women do not allow black men space to grow because they are afraid that they are going to get harmed again. Right? And when I say black men, I don't mean the same man. I mean different men. Right? So the same way women will say, oh, a man will get hurt one time in 5th grade and never trust women again. Women, y'all do the same thing. Y'all have just been socialized to process each time that it happens. But y'all still have remnants. Men just have more remnants because we have not been taught to process them the same way. But y'all do the same thing. The same thing. Right? So as much as we like to talk about how it is that men invalidate women's trauma, which we do, 100%. I'm not saying that we don't. But there are women who like to behave as if though they have never perpetrated trauma against men because it no longer validates how it is that they as women perceive other women. They have not accepted the reality that they can cause trauma, and that makes them a toxic woman. We are not going to sit and pretend as if though toxic women do not exist and create toxic men. We're not going to do that, right? We are not. So on the flip side of this, I learned a new factoid the other day, right? Because I'm the type of boy where once I learn new information, you know, whoop, 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 bop, 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 right? So I read a carousel that said that we as people tend to project the actions of the 20 to 25% of black men who are extremely toxic onto the other 75% of black men who have toxic tendencies or abusive tendencies. And there's a difference between the two. There's a difference between somebody being an abuser and somebody having abusive tendencies or somebody having toxic tendencies. Everybody has the potential to have toxic tendencies. Everybody has a toxic trait, bottom line. Everybody has a shadow form, bottom line. Everybody has a form about themselves that they do not want to show to other people, but will bring out when they have to defend themselves. Bottom line. That is why they are called defense mechanisms, because we bring them out when we feel as if though we are being attacked. Why do you feel as if though you are being attacked? Right? What are your triggers? What do you believe is going on in the situation versus what is actually going on? Right? My bad, TikTok. We had to get back busy. Versus what is going on, right? So somebody just asked me, what if they're unaware of what it is that they're doing? Thank you for bringing that up. Self-awareness in the context of healing trauma is completely and totally necessary. I'm going to say it one more time. Self-awareness is completely and totally necessary in the healing of trauma, because self-awareness will tell you who and who not to fuck with. It's not the awareness of other people. Discernment does not come from externalization. Discernment comes from internalization. Discernment comes from you knowing yourself. Do you understand what I'm saying? And a lot of us do not know ourselves, which is the reason why we don't have the discernment, which is the reason why we keep ending up repeating the same lessons. We do not want to admit when somebody is bad for us because we keep trying to prove that they are not. We keep trying to prove to ourselves that we are somebody that we are not. And this is usually based upon unresolved trauma. So I'm going to give another personal example. The reason why I stayed in these relationships way past the point that I was supposed to stay in them was because I was operating under the premise that as a man, I had to quote unquote fix everything. I was also operating under the premise that because I'm a man, I somehow am at fault for things that go out of whack, right? And I was operating under this premise a couple of years ago, y'all. Like, this is not something that is like, oh, like this is recent, right? This idea that because a woman brings something to me and says you did this, I have to accept it that way. That's a poor boundary, right? But that's also a poor boundary based upon me recognizing that as a man, we as men do unintentionally hurt women. That left me open to a lot of emotional manipulation because it did not allow me to affirm what it is that was actually going on with me. Right? So what happened was that instead of me verbalizing what it is that I felt, I would internalize it because I did not want the information weaponized against me. So what a lot of these men say when they say that when we tell women the truth, they turn around and they use it against us, y'all do. Y'all do. Because what'll happen is, because you all have been taught that men are not emotional creatures, you have also been taught to utilize low-level form emotional manipulation in order to get a response from this man. He ain't saying in X, Y, and Z way. That means he must not care. He's not doing the X, Y, and Z way. That means he must not give a damn. Or has he been taught that as a black man, he can't emote beyond a particular point, otherwise somebody's going to try to kill him? Or has he seen how other black men's emotions have been used against them in situations where that black man was completely and totally validated? But because he was a large black man and he ain't got it to the point of anger and hurt, they could then villainize him based upon his responses. So the angry black woman trope very much so exists for black men as well. So let's get real in the field, right? Yes, there are 20 to 25% of brothers who do all the shit that we talk about, and we tend to focus on those brothers because they are causing a lot of damage, right? They are. What about those 75% of brothers who are just trying to figure out their way through without becoming those 20 to 25% of brothers? We tend to say to them, you are behaving just like those 20 to 25%, when the reality of the situation is he has probably internalized some toxic masculinity himself that he is trying to learn how to no longer use. I have had women say to me, literally say to me, I did not expect you to make these types of mistakes because you are this type of man. Ergo, when you made those types of mistakes, I placed you in the same category as those other men. That is wildly unfair. That is wildly unfair. That is a cognitive distortion called generalization. Right? It is also called magnifying, when you take this one negative portion and you spread it across everything else instead of looking at it from a more balanced perspective. Women tend to magnify what has happened to their emotional intensity so that it matches. What I mean by that is there are a number of women who will throw out the term, you are gaslighting me, because that man will not validate her emotional response. You screaming and hollering at me and I'm saying to you, you don't got to do all that. I'm not attempting to police you. Right? There are some men who utilize that to police. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that it's not always a policing thing. Sometimes it's that man attempting to calm you down so that he does not become overwhelmed. That man has triggers too, and you may be triggering him. Right? Because 75% of brothers may have the characteristics of those 20 to 25%. That does not make them that 20 to 25%. Because if I were to turn around and say to all of the women who are on this live right now that the rates of domestic violence have skyrocketed in the last 5 years, would you be willing to accept the fact that you at some point in time in your motherfucking life engaged in domestic violence against a man? Because you can go look the statistics up. Have you seen those statistics? Domestic violence against men has skyrocketed in the last 10 years. You can go look it up. You can go look it up. I think now men are starting to report domestic violence at rates of like 60 to 65%. Because now that men have an accurate definition of what domestic violence is, they're like, damn, this was a domestic violence incident. Damn, I probably was abused. We have to talk about this from a more even perspective. Because I'm not going to lie to you, especially within black people, it is heavy-handed on one side. It is. I've seen it. Right? I've seen it. Now, on the flip side of this, brothers, now it's our turn, right? What I've seen is that women will respond better to constructive criticism than the brothers, right? Brothers, everybody who is engaging in constructive criticism with you is not attempting to blame you for everything that black men have done. We are not. I see that in my therapy room as well. I see black men coming in ready to get like laid out, ready for everything to be blamed on them. That's a wild response. That is a wild response. That is the psychological equivalent of somebody raising their arm and you jumping. I need y'all to recognize what I'm saying. Right? Brothers, when we engage in constructive criticism, it is just that. It is constructive. Right? If I'm saying to you that as a man, I do not experience some of the same things that you do because I'm utilizing a different method. If you go, man, that's that gay shit, that's that feminist shit, you're not listening. You're not listening. You are looking for a way to continue to do the same thing that you're doing and expecting a different result. That is literally insanity. That is literally insanity. Literally insanity. Right? Constructive criticism is the way to grow in relationships. Bottom line. Bottom line. And we as black men do not respond well to constructive criticism from black women. We don't. We do not. The reason being is because, once again, we have been taught this idea of masculinity that puts women beneath us. And that is the reason why a lot of black women feel as if though they have to get not necessarily violent, but ignorant in order to get listened to. So it's a cycle. It's not one person calls one thing and then no. If we continue to try to find fault, you will consistently engage in blame. I will say it one more time. If you consistently try to find fault, you will always engage in the blame game. The reality of the situation is nobody knows exactly where the cycle of black men and black women harming each other began outside of us knowing that the Caucasians had a hand in that shit. But we as black people are responsible for healing those wounds. We can't expect for these Caucasian folk to be able to tell us what's going on in our relationships because you cannot solve the problem at the same vibration that it was created. You can't. You cannot solve a problem at the same vibration that it was created. And a lot of us want to stay in the same vibration because it is comfortable. Which is the reason why I say to people, you are not seeking a solution. You are seeking emotional validation. And that is irrespective of gender. And you need to know when the difference is. You need to know when you are seeking emotional validation versus when you are seeking a solution, because a lot of us conflate the two. And the reason being was because a lot of us were not emotionally validated as children. And once again, because of the way that we as black people have been taught to deal with children, we tend to speak to each other's inner children as if though they are the children that we were when we were younger. So do you really watch your tongue when you speak to your partner? Or do you treat them like the child that you were when you began doing some of the things that you were doing in your childhood? So in other words, when your significant other begins behaving in a way that is difficult for you to manage, do you treat them the same way black parents have treated black children in the past before gentle parenting? I need you to think about it. How do you speak to somebody when you're frustrated? How do you speak to somebody when you are upset? Do you try to harm them in the same way your child was harmed? And when I say your child, I mean your inner child. Once again, irrespective of gender. Right? So once again, coming back to this whole idea of us as black men not taking constructive criticism well, we take it as an attack because a lot of us as black men have not fully defined for ourselves what it means for us to be solid and foundational in our manhood. So we take it as an attack. Right? And the reason why it's so difficult for us to find solid foundational rooting in our manhood is because Once again, white supremacy makes it difficult for us to achieve the same traditional masculine ideological roles that white men have. So literally, black men are attempting to do the same thing that white men do while ignoring the fact that racism is there, or identifying the fact that racism is there, but will continue to reach for the same ideologies and goals. Black men, you literally, once again, I'm gonna say this again. Traditional masculine ideologies are overwhelmingly white. Y'all will say we need to engage in tradition, and you don't even know where the tradition comes from. You don't. Somebody in my comments said to me, it's funny that you think that masculinity or the search for power is an American thing. I never said that. I said that we as black men have been introduced to an Americanized version of this power search. We have been introduced to an Americanized version of this power source. What does this mean? That means that we will consume material things, spit out the husk, and not continue to engage in the regeneration of what it is that we have just taken. That is Americanized. That is literally American-based imperialism. That is how the United States engages in foreign policy. So once again, you want to engage in a tradition that is not designed to benefit your person. But then when somebody calls it out and say, hey, you want to try something else? No, I got to be a man. Da, 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 da. What kind of man are you trying to be? What kind of man are you really trying to be? Do you know where the annals of manhood, the halls of manhood, the building of manhood that you are attempting to enter? Do you know who built that building? Do you know what the original blueprints look like? Do you know? Oh yeah, I know where it comes from. Then tell me. And then tell me why you're continuing to follow this path if you know that this path came from people who were literally attempting to destroy you and your family. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Make it make sense. Right? Because the reality of the situation overall is that both black men and black women have contributed to each other's harm. Contemporarily, both black men and black women have contributed to each other's harm on a microcosmic scale, on an individual scale. I am not, please do not get me confused, I am not talking about macro systemic systems of power. Macro systemic systems of power exist because other people continue to engage in the behaviors. That's macro systemic. That is societal. That is something that people do not think about if they are not called to think about it. Micro systemically, people have a choice as to whether or not they are going to engage in particular ideologies. It is far too often that we as people like to tell people what they are doing instead of allowing that person to tell us how they are perceiving it. Because the reality of the situation is, once again, we want to protect ourselves. We don't want to be victims to things. And I'm not saying that these things are wrong. What I'm saying is that far too often we take too much pride in our own self-righteousness, and it prevents us from seeing where it is that we need to be humble. Because I'll be damned as a black man, if you sit up here and tell me that as a black woman you cannot cause me harm because I'm a black man, I'll curse you the fuck out. As a black man, you cannot sit up here and tell me that we are not somehow complicit in the patriarchy, or the patriarchy doesn't exist simply because you do not have the same extent of mediocrity as white men. I'm gonna call you a fucking idiot. Because the patriarchy exists whether you want it to exist or not. We engage in the patriarchy whether you want to admit it or not. We may not have the same extent or breadth of power as white men do, but mesocosmically, which means in the middle, we as black men engage in some of those same behaviors, and we definitely need to stop. Because it's literally preventing us from building the community the way that we need to build it. Black women right now are in the most advantageous position for the black community. Because there are so many of them interdispersed within the banking system of the United States that if we were to decide to begin exodusing all of our black dollars, most of those black dollars would have to come through black women. But we as black men are so concerned about putting them in their place, we're not supporting them where they are. From a strategic perspective, this is the reason why black women will say, y'all don't want us to be free, y'all just want to be empowered. And sadly, we're behaving that way. Right? And I'm going to break it down to you microcosmically. I'm going to give it to you like this. If black women are the most educated and most employed people in the black community right at this moment in time, and we as black men are in a house with a black woman like this, and we are constantly telling her her place and her role is to be subservient to me, we are dimming that black woman's shine, and we are dimming that black woman's ability to be the leader that she could potentially be for the family. Simply because we want to be crowned the king of a kingdom that, once again, we have not done the work to rule. Not only that, why does it bother you so much that she's a queen? Why does that bother you, brother? You don't think that that's weird? You don't think that you have an internal problem with your wife doing well? Or your girlfriend doing? You don't think that that's a problem? You don't see that? You don't see how that's converse to your whole idea of wanting the black family to be more powerful? You don't see that? Right? Because even if she was a stay-at-home mother, why not encourage her to invest that money? Right? Why not encourage her to put that money into whole life insurance and create an infinite banking system for your family? No, you just concerned about what she's doing with her money in her free time. You just concerned with the money because she's not spending it on what you believe is appropriate to spend it on. That's counterproductive. Bring her the information. Help her build the pipeline. Give her some things that she can use. Because clearly she a hustler. But because you stuck on the fact that only men can be hustlers, or you stuck on the fact that you got to bring in more money than she do in order to establish yourself as a man, because the clown ass niggas that you surround yourself with think that that's the appropriate way to be a man, you need to change your friends, brother. Because as much as we talk about, oh, is that woman in a relationship? Does she got a man? Nigga, do any of your friends got women? I'm sorry, a woman. WOMAN. And is she happy, or is she lying to save that man's ego? Is she really happy? Right? You can tell when a woman is happy in a relationship when she willingly does things for her man. If that man asks her to do something, and then she get up, she not happy in that relationship. She not. Right? If that man asks her to do something, it seems like she got an attitude, it's not for no reason. Right? So once again, we are looking at this from the perspective. Of equal, open, and honest growth. We're talking about a family tree, but a family tree does not grow in one direction. All of the branches grow out. But the trunk and those roots stabilize the tree, but even the roots don't all grow in the same direction. Right? Even the roots don't all grow in the same direction. So what does that mean? What does that mean, Odie? This is what this means. You cannot control or curtail somebody's growth and expect them to blossom, because that is not the natural order of things. It is not. You cannot curtail somebody's growth and then be mad that they did not reach the sky. That is not how that goes. That is not how that goes. You cannot say to somebody, you fucked this up, and then continue to criticize how it is that they try to fix it based upon their knowledge. That's not fair. That's not fair. As black men and black women, we need to give each other more space to grow. Right? Now, black women, I will say this. A lot of y'all conflate space to grow with falling in love with potential. They're not the same thing. Black men, we conflate giving space for growth with demeaning when they make a mistake. When they make a mistake, it is not the same thing. It is not. Right? What I learned about the podcast community, sincerely, the black male and female podcast community, is that they are toxic people attracted to one another that won't shut the fuck up about it. They are attracted to one another, the toxic shit about one another, and they will not shut the fuck up about it. And actually, that's how it happens with most podcast people. Right? The alpha male and the boss, like all that shit. Yeah, no, y'all, all of y'all are attracted to the toxic traits in one another, and y'all don't do enough to fix it because people keep trying to suck that toxicity out your dick or pussy. That's what's going on. You adorn yourself with these trinkets of materialism and then get mad when people who are materialistic and empty come to take from you. You drip yourself in blood and you get mad when sharks come. That don't make no sense to me. At all. So all of these situations that y'all keep hearing about, you know what I'm saying, on these podcasts and stuff like that, these are real situations, right? But recognize that it is a cyclical community. It is a circle, right? These people are engaging with one another and continuing to create the content that we see. I figured it out. Because ain't no way. Ain't no way. People like Andrew Tate, right? People like Kevin Samuels, right? People like the Daily Up podcast, some of the women that they have on there, or some of the women that they have to bring in as guests, yeah, they're attracted to one another. These are the same women. Women who chase men for their pockets and men who chase women for their pussy all end up in the same waiting room. Men who chase women for their pussy and women who chase men for their pockets all end up in the same waiting room. Mine. Mine. Right? Because there's a part of you that is attracted to the idea of something and not the reality of something. Because an idea is easy to control because all you have to do is think about it differently. But the reality is you have to work to create that idea. You have to work to make that idea a reality. So for anybody, whether it be man, woman, they, them, whatever, are you the type of person who can maintain the type of person that you are asking for? I'm going to say it one more time. I don't give a damn what your gender identification is. I don't care about none of that. He, she, they, them. I don't care. Are you capable of maintaining the person that you are asking for? Are you a reflection of the person that you are asking for? Is your vessel large enough to contain the type of substance that you are asking to be put in it? Because if it's not, baby, you're going to be in for a rude awakening. And a lot of us are asking for our vessels to be filled when we have not done the work to rework those vessels. We are asking for things that occur outside of our limiting beliefs, and we wonder why these things have not come yet, because there is a gate or there is a limit that exists within your mind that prevents it from coming in. Your vessel is not prepared. Your vessel is not prepared. Right? So when we remove these ideas of gender as a person, this is the reason why I say you are a spirit first and a person first before you are a gender. You are a spirit and a person first. Every person has a brain. Every person has a brain stem. Every person has a central and sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. So as a person, Is your vessel prepared for the substance that you are asking for? Can you digest the food that you are trying to put on your plate? Because, baby, let me tell you something. If them peppers hot and you ain't prepared for that capsaicin, your mouth gonna be burning. And you gonna be mad at everybody but you for eating them damn peppers. You trying to drink a whole glass of milk knowing good and goddamn well you lactose intolerant, baby. You better get you some lactate or some oat milk. You allergic to chocolate, but the whole time you trying to put chocolate flakes on your ice cream. What? Hey. Stop playing with yourself. Stop it. Stop playing with yourself. Because the reality of the situation is we tend to project the hopes that we have for ourselves into other people when we are falling in love with somebody else's potential. We are hoping that we are special enough for that person to change for it. And I'm going to tell you something. Ain't nobody that special. Because even if it looks like that person changed for you, that person had to make a decision to change. You just so happen to be the catalyst. That person didn't change for you. They'll say that. That'll make you feel comfortable. But no, you were just the catalyst. Right? That's the reason why so many people walk around here with that whole feeling of, oh, well, why am I always the person that somebody get to before they get into a relationship? Because you are a catalyst for change. But at the same time, you do not demand those needs from other people. You can still be a catalyst for change while still getting your needs met. That's not a problem. But the reality of the situation is, how many of us actually verbalize our needs at the forefront? Or are we so scared of the idea of our needs not being met that we don't say anything and just hope that this person will figure it out? That's some bullshit. Ain't nobody a mind reader, dog. And you cannot be upset with somebody based upon your unspoken expectations or your poorly communicated expectations. We try to wrap shit up in a gift so much that we forget that people can get caught up on the wrapper. We try to wrap things up and make them so pretty sometimes that we forget that people can get caught up on the wrapper and miss what's inside the box. Give them the item. Do not give a package. Give the item. And if the person does not know the value of the item, then you do not continue to ask, because we know the value of the item. Whatever that item may be. Right? So, at the end of the day, what I'm asking for from the people is accountability. And real accountability, not that fake ass IG shit, right? Not the accountability that we put on Front Street, but then when we in the back room of the house, we tussling with somebody about the things that we just said we accountable for in the front room. Let's not do that. Let's not. Let us not. Because if it's one thing that can't none of my previous partners say about me, I grow. I do my best to grow. Not where they tell me I need to grow. I take that with a grain of salt. Right? But I do my best to grow. And I do my best to understand. Right? And that's all we can really do. We can only do the best we can with what we have at the time that we have it. Right? And don't be afraid to go back and apologize, because you fucked up too. You feel me? Let's see what's going on in these comments, man. Y'all going crazy. Let's see. Self-awareness is vital. You been a terror, I'm not gonna yes, sir. Like they tell women who are abused, just set boundaries and pick better. I really hope you're taking your own advice. Right? You've been holding space for your man for 10 years. It might be time for you to find another man. Yes, Bell Hooks definitely touches on this in Feminism for Everyone and We Real Cool, Black Men and Masculinity. She also touches on it in The Will to Change. Right? Most definitely. What does emotional abuse look like? Okay, so emotional abuse looks like essentially somebody attempting to either make you feel as if though what it is that you're feeling is invalid, not as valuable as what it is that they are feeling, or attempts to make you feel as if though your emotions can be used as weapons against your well-being. So I'm going to give you an example. If you're engaging with somebody and you say to them, you have harmed me in this way, and that person says, well, if you didn't do this, I would not have done that. That person is essentially attempting to blame you for what it is that they've done to you. Right? So you can be accountable for what it is that you've done in that situation. That does not mean that you have to accept the fact that they have, in a sense, retaliated in the way that they retaliated. So that's what emotional abuse can look like. That's one example. Right? Women tap into patriarchy and misogyny just as much as men do. I don't know about that. I'm reluctant to say that, right? If there are statistics that back that up, then I would be more willing to, engage in that debate. What I will say is that men and women engage in the patriarchy and misogyny in different ways. Women tend to do it in order to weaponize it against men who they want to do something or who they want to listen to them, and men usually weaponize it against women who they want to submit to them. Most definitely. I think that is the rest of the comments that I have. So we're going to close out the live. Good people, great people, guys, people. If you enjoyed the live and you want to continue learning about and doing what it is that we're doing right now, I have an email group called Cypher. Right now, Cypher is not only just an email group, it's an online community where we come, we hold each other accountable, we read books like Bell Hooks, We Real Cool, and we read books like, The Will to Change, and we read books like The Spirit of Intimacy. Y'all have been asking me for a book list. Y'all have been asking me what all of these books are. Right, I'm sorry, my bad. Y'all been asking me what all these books are. This book list, that book list will be available in Cypher. Right, y'all have been asking me, are you gonna write a book? Are you gonna start a podcast? My book, right, or what it is that I study or what it is that I want to impart onto the people is going to be located inside of the Cypher, right? So what it is that I'm doing is I'm building an online community that feels the need for a very Black-centered perspective on how it is that we can move forward in emotional intelligence without relying too heavily on white supremacist ideologies that we know that have been far too baked into psychology for the last 200 years. So I am literally taking what it is that I learned from my master's program, which was the community psychology focus and Afrocentric theory program. I'm taking the Black psychology seminars, the Black case management seminars, and I'm placing all of that into a course which utilizes my style of teaching in order to teach people what's going on and how it is going on in the Black community. So once again, my community is called Cypher, and the reason why I call it Cypher is because Cypher is a noun in the 5% of ideology, and the noun can be in a person, place, or a thing. So the Cypher is a place where you can come and you can learn about the person, the person, the places, or the things that created us as Black people, and how it is that we can continue to create ourselves and continue to gather this ascension that we as Black people are desperately looking for, especially as it relates to psychology. So once again, good people, great people, God's people. My name is Professor Odie, and I appreciate y'all coming on to the live with me this afternoon. It's going to be another live tomorrow. We're going to come back with another topic. We're going to, I'm doing this every day. So once again, y'all run up that email list, share the live if you know some people who are, I almost forgot. For the people who are looking for one-on-one coaching from me, all of my slots are filled up, y'all. Y'all went brazy, right? So Cypher is also going to be a platform where I engage in group coaching style engagements, right? So how that's going to work is that I'm going to have a survey on a weekly basis. What do you all want to talk about this week, or what topics do you all feel that we could cover this week? And whatever topic gets the most votes, that's the topic that we're going to cover, and it's going to be covered in a seminar format. So I'm thinking either once a week or twice a week, we're going to cover particular topics that allow us to have a deeper insight about what it is that we can change within ourselves in order to continue doing what it is that we are doing as Black people. So yeah, y'all, like, once again, run up the email list. It's in my bio on TikTok. You click blackwealth.com and it'll send you, or it'll bring you to the page where you can put in your email information, and it'll give you, on the page it says a free trial of Cypher. That free trial is no longer available. So it'll bring you right to the Cypher page for the people who came into the email list before they were able to get the free trial. I changed it. I told y'all on Monday, I was like, listen, this is gonna change by Monday. So the new prices up on the Cypher group, And you know what I'm saying? I may change it again. I may not. It all depends on what it is that, you know what I'm saying, I feel is the most accessible for the people. So, once again, good people, great people, guys, people. I love y'all to death. Peace, love, soul, and butter rolls. I'll see y'all tomorrow.